Today on the Lead More podcast, we talk about how to win more deals. Yes, that's right. How to win more deals, close more sales, i.e. make more money. If you are an entrepreneur, a leader, everyone has a feeling about sales, whether you love it and you dive in and you just live for the chase, or most people don't like it. The word is icky. They're scared of it. They don't want to do cold calls. They feel like they have to be on the phone all day, but there's so many other ways to do it. And today, the main focus of our episode today is on the topic of proposals. How do you use a proposal to help you win those deals, close more sales, make more money? And we sit down with my good friend, Kyle Racki. Kyle is the CEO and founder of Proposify, a software company that builds proposal software, but he used to be a creative entrepreneur. He was an agency owner, started as a freelancer, then ran an agency, and then created a software company. His platform has sent users on his platform have sent over 10 million proposals. And they recently came out with a report called the State of Proposals 2024. And so they dug into the data to look at how do you close more deals, have more proposals signed and accepted. So we talk about that topic on today's episode. First of all, we start off, why should you have a proposal? I always thought of a proposal as like a promise. So in my time at Lemonly, we created the proposal to help tell you exactly what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, when we're going to do it, for how much money, and how we're going to help you achieve your goals, right? That's the promise. We put all that in the proposal. And so today's episode, Kyle will walk us through why do a proposal, what should actually be in it, what's the structure, the format, the sections, and why each one of those matters. And then a few tips at the end of just how to close more deals, how to think of like the process around presenting the proposal, the follow-up, all of that. So if you are an entrepreneur, a leader who is responsible for any way, this could go from, nonprofit fundraising to big business to creative entrepreneurs and freelancers. Let's make really great proposals that get accepted. And today, Kyle's going to help show us how. All right, welcome back, friends, to another episode of Lead More. I'm here with a longtime friend, my buddy Kyle. We met through in a coaching program, years ago, and share a sort of a similar origin story as original agency owners. So, Kyle, what have you been up to? How you been?
Hey, John. Good to see you, as always. We used to spend a lot of time in person when we meet up with our coaching group, and I, just always loved your positive energy. So glad we get to keep talking.
Yeah, I'm glad we stayed in touch. And so today you're a software founder and a CEO of a company. We're going to talk about that a little bit, but tell us kind of where you got your start. You're a Canadian, of course, so you're super nice. We know that. Tell us.
We have our
a little
fair
bit about
share of assholes in Canada, You just have more of them in the U.S.
Yeah,
There's more people overall.
That's a ratio thing.
Yeah,
tell me tell the audience how you got your start professionally.
So I went to school for graphic design. That was what I always wanted to be, kind of like a creative, a cartoonist, was I think when I was a kid, and then an animator when I was a teenager. So
you were like a rocker, right? You've always been a musician as well.
Yeah. I picked up guitar when I was 12 and played in bands, and then had my midlife crisis a couple of years ago and started a new band, Club Sunday. Check it out on Spotify. Shameless plug. Coming out with a new single August 9th. So yeah, absolutely.
That's why Kyle's here, actually, to promote his single.
Yeah, don't worry about my business, Proposify. Just focus on the music, Club Sunday. I've always really loved creativity and art and music and things like that. So, the fact that I'm like a CEO of a software company, if you had told me when I was a kid or a teenager, that's what you would be when you grow up, I wouldn't have believed you. It wasn't something I aspired to be. But when I got my early start, when I was like early 20s, I worked at agencies, mostly advertising, web design, sort of web development agency as well. And I just kind of saw like my older colleagues going off and just running their own freelance practice, and that always appealed to me. So I started to take on a couple contracts on the side, and then eventually I just left my full-time job and was a freelancer for a year. Then I got busy with a lot of client work. Ended up partnering with somebody who I really enjoyed working with, Kevin, who is still, we're still partners to this day, 20 years later.
That's great.
And he kind of helped me, understand the business and the sales side of it, because that's where he was strong, and that was always very scary and foreign to me. I could sell enough to feed myself, but I didn't really know how to sell bigger deals and all that kind of stuff. So we actually started an agency together. Was our first foray into business, ran that for 5 years, and then started Proposify 10 years ago, and here we are.
Yeah, I call that like the solopreneur trap, right? It's like the hunting and gathering, like you said exactly. You get enough to feed yourself, but you don't feel like you can ever break out of that hamster wheel, right? It's like next project.
Kevin was kind of my crutch in that way, right?
Yeah.
Because we always said he went out and caught the fish, and I fed, or I fried them up or whatever. I was the cook. But he would actually often bring me in on. He was good at creating opportunities, and he was really good at outbound and business development and sort of getting people interested. But he often couldn't speak to the work the way that I could, so he would introduce me to people, and he would sort of like validate or do a bit of discovery around an opportunity, but then it would be kind of on me to pitch and present and do the proposal and get them closed. So that was where I really enjoyed a lot of the sales, and where I started to actually learn how to do it right.
Yeah. Well, and as a creative, I think once you kind of reframe sales as problem solving, I think then creatives can kind of talk themselves into being good at it, right? Because we always say like, I can't do sales. I don't like sales. I hate sales. Yeah. That's a very similar origin story to Lemonly. Like I was selling the work and project managing it. Amy was building and designing it. And what I found out is just I could go faster than she could, right? And so that's how we hired our first employee, because her queue started getting, more full. A sales call takes 30, 40 minutes. An infographic took much longer. So, but tell me then, where was the insight or the challenge or the friction of where you were like, wait a minute, we should build a tool around this idea of proposals?
I had the idea for Proposify, I think as far back as 2006. This would have been, I may have been a freelancer at the time, or maybe I was even still working somewhere. But I had experienced the problem way further back in the early 2000s, because when I got my first job at an agency, they put the junior guy who bills less on proposals, right? Because they're trying to win a big deal. They want it to look really nice. Get the junior designer to do it. And that was where I first experienced the pain of, tracking down case studies of old work, which at the time were on CDs because Dropbox wasn't a thing. And, being emailed Word documents from the account managers to I had just prettied up all my text and gotten the kerning just right. And then I had to reflow it with a new Word doc because they wanted to make changes. And I was like, man, this process sucks. And I think Basecamp was fairly new. So I was playing around with that. And I was like, well, there should be Basecamp for proposals. Yeah. And that was the spark of the idea. I wireframed up kind of what a UI could look like for the app. And this was like literally over 20 years ago.
So did you sit on that for a while? Like you just kind of had that? Yeah.
Just sat on it. And then like 5 years in of running the agency, it was, agencies are a tough business, and I wasn't particularly good at running it. I think maybe if I started one today, I should be better. Like I hope I would be better. But at the time, like I was taking on clients that were too small, that were too demanding, and we it was always chasing down invoices and, giving way too much away, and just all the classic mistakes you make running an agency. That's what we were doing. So it wasn't lucrative for us. We weren't making a lot of money. And we were just barely paying ourselves. After 5 years, we go like, God, we got to do something else here. So that was when we I think even further back, we had started to experiment with some different product ideas. We knew we wanted to get into SaaS because of the recurring revenue model and because of the higher gross margins and all the good reasons why people get into SaaS. But building a product people actually want and are willing to pay for is difficult.
That's the hard part. Yeah.
That's the hard part. So it took us a while to be able, and finally I kind of dusted off this old proposal app idea and built a prototype. And then I think up on stage at like a startup event pitching it. And I had tons of people come up to me afterwards and be like, man, I write proposals. I would buy a tool like that. And I was like, okay, the market's telling me something.
Yep, 100%. We followed that same trajectory. It was like Google Doc proposals. And then we went to Google Slide proposals because we were like, at least we could like copy paste a lot of these slides again, like the about us and the who we are and the case studies. But then met you, and of course made the last step into Proposify and recognized all the kind of level up features from a repeatability, scalability, templateability type of deal. So that's what we want to talk about today is how entrepreneurs, creatives can essentially win more deals, make more money, close more sales with some proposal tips, I guess we'll call them. So over a decade, how many proposals do you think have been sent on your guys' platform, if you're willing to share that?
Well, last year's I think was about 1.5 or 1.3 million.
Okay.
It's and in a funny way, we've sort of have a similar user base because we actually have fewer accounts that are bigger. So it sort of evens out. So if I had to guess, I would say somewhere around 10 million proposals or so went through our system.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So a decade of running this company, over potentially 10 million proposals. You guys just came out with like a state of proposals 2024. And so with all that kind of contextual knowledge, you have a lot of thoughts and insights on how someone should win more deals. Mm-hmm. So let's dive right in. What would be your first tip to somebody who is thinking, gosh, I want to get bigger projects. I want to get more projects. I want my winning percentage to go up. Where do we start?
Yeah. Well, let's start with why a proposal at all. Because I think that for a lot of freelancers and solopreneurs who are used to just kind of being fed work, I don't know if how much is anyone's fed it, but a lot of times these like a freelancer will rely on word of mouth and referrals and warm contacts.
Like a handshake, right? Like, sure, we'll work with you. What's the price?
Yeah, a napkin sketch over the coffee table, right? I think it'll be about this much. And that is certainly a fine way to run a freelance practice. I know it's I think when I was freelancing, I don't know if I ever sent a proposal because I didn't need to, right? Because it was somebody saying like, hey, I heard from so-and-so you were great to work with. I have a project. How much will it cost? And I could just go, it'll be about $5,000. And they'd be like, cool, sounds good. Then maybe an invoice or something, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like I need to paint the case for the proposal. Why a proposal?
Sure.
And I think that if you're a freelancer who wants to grow, because freelance isn't for everybody, quick aside, had a call with a new team member at Proposify who just joined the customer success department as a designer. And she was a freelancer for 15 years. It's just funny because I just had this call today. And I was like, 15 years is a long time, to be a freelancer. She's like, I know. And she took a job with us. But she was like, yeah, I hated the admin and the bookkeeping and all this and the sales and everything. But, it enabled me to be home with my kids and everything else.
So yeah, she's had some battle scars after 15 years for sure.
100%. Right. So anyway, I feel like if you want to grow and you want to have a team, you obviously need more work, and that work needs to be of higher quality in the sense from a deal size perspective, because you have to be able to charge more when you have a team. Like it's, most freelancers probably don't charge enough, but especially if you've got a team involved, you have to be able to charge more because margins are what kills agencies, right? Like being like the projects are too small. They're not recurring. There are a lot of one-offs, and this is not a volume business. An agency can't be a volume business unless you're a massive, massive company with tons of operational scale and efficiency at play.
And guess what? None of those companies started that way, right? They became that way over time. So yeah.
You need pillar projects, pillar clients, hopefully some kind of a retainer agreement with at least some of them. And the margins need to be really, really strong, right? You can't just be doing it for how much it costs you personally. Like you've got to factor in all your non-billable assets, your bookkeepers, your salespeople, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to be able to sell bigger work to bigger clients to do it well. And
100%.
They are not going to just take a napkin sketch over the table, right? They're going to be like, send me a proposal. And there might be multiple stakeholders involved, right? Because you're charging more, they might need more approvals, or they need to do it around budgeting season. They have to actually start factoring that in. So it's really important for freelancers to start, starting to even just do proposals at all, to be able to increase the professionalism of how they come across to prospects so that they can close bigger deals.
Yep. Makes sense. So it's both sort of like checking all the boxes that particular client wants to see, but also probably kind of almost like faking it till you make it, right? Like I think there's almost I always use this line of like big companies want to act small. Like here in Sioux Falls, there's Coca-Cola Sioux Falls office, right? It's just like the distributing center. But if I go to the website, there's probably a picture of some guy who's the Sioux Falls regional manager and will bring me my Coca-Cola or whatever. But then small companies want to act big, right? Like you'll typically see maybe a 2-3 person shop not put team pictures on their website because you don't want to let them know how small you actually are. And I feel like the proposal is a way of showing like, no, we came to play. We're professional. We've thought through all the aspects of this project, and here's our proposal.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't have to be huge, right? So when we look at stated proposals, the average section count is about seven sections. Typically a cover page, really, and this is, a chance to stand out. It's kind of like it's your homepage hero banner. Even better if you can personalize it to the customer, so you can put their logo on it. People love to see their own branding. They want to see themselves in your work, right? So it shouldn't be all about your brand. Some sort of.
I always named my subject line whenever I sent a proposal at Lemonly, like Proposify X Lemonly, right? Like this collaboration, like this cool coming together of two great brands. Like even just like your point, letting them see their name in your work.
Absolutely. Proposals really, when you think about it, it's kind of like one-to-one marketing in a way, right? Like I don't know if people have heard the term account-based marketing, right? It gets thrown around. It's this idea of like hand-picking accounts and marketing just to them and making it way more personalized. And really proposals are like the OG sort of account-based marketing.
Yeah, I buy that.
Because you're essentially making marketing materials just specifically to one client. Now, of course, a lot of it is pre-canned and templated, but it's not really the point. It feels personal to the prospect.
Love that. Okay, so some of it just starts right away off the top with, I like that idea of like the banner or hero image of your proposal. What are some of those other elements in those 7 elements that should be included?
So the second one is the executive summary. You could also call this an introduction, a project summary. This should be the most personalized part of the proposal outside of maybe the pricing. This is your chance to talk to your stakeholder in the proposal itself and say, I've listened to you, I've heard you, because you've already had a conversation, maybe multiple conversations where they've described their needs and their wants and their problems. And if you do a good job of discovery, as they say in sales, right, it will help you feed that back to them to be able to make sure that you're not just sending them a pre-canned, hey, here's our list of services. Go, let us know when you want to start. You're basically saying like, okay, I understand that you have a problem with brand awareness around a new product that you're building and nobody knows it exists. And that's why you want us to build the video for you, which is, we've done similar work for similar types of companies. And it lets you actually be able to make them feel heard and understood by you.
Yep. I love that. We called that in our Proposify template. That was our what we heard section.
Love that.
Which honestly was just sort of regurgitating back to them what they told us on the call. Right. And so that would be my tip is like, don't underestimate the power of honestly repeating back to what somebody said, because I think creatives tend to like overcomplicate, right? We want to make it sound really awesome and really like robust, but just say like, we want a logo that will help us do this. Then say like, Lemonly is going to help you create a logo to help you do this, right? Like, so yeah, I love that.
Well, to that point, right? You hear it said sometimes by like communication experts. One of the best, like it's almost like a charisma thing. If you want to be liked by people, you're a good listener, right? You're not always droning on about yourself. And one of the best way to be a listener is literally to just reflect back what people are saying to you. Mm-hmm. And it might, and obviously you don't want to be weird or, sort of awkward about it. But if you can naturally sort of say like, yeah, like here's what I heard you say, and sort of put it in your own words. It's one of the best ways to make people like actually like you more. Yeah. It's like, oh wow, they're such a good listener, because they're literally just echoing back what you're saying to them.
Yeah. Yep. Use their name and all that. Yeah. Exactly. Okay. Perfect.
So you can apply that to your proposals. Now, really advanced tip is actually put a video in the cover letter. So do like a vidyard or some kind of a Loom, a personalized video, because not only do you get to then essentially say that all that stuff you're going to say in the executive summary, you can actually present it and they can hear your voice and see your mannerisms. But if they forward that to somebody else in their organization, maybe somebody who holds the keys to budget, who would not be involved in the sales process, they get to actually see you and know that you're a real person.
That's such a good point, Kyle. And I think that happens all the time in this creative space where like the person you're talking to on the phone is not the ultimate decision maker. And so you also have to think about your proposal as a document that can live just beyond this one call or presentation, right? Because I'm talking with Lisa and she loves us and really wants to work with us, but then I'm kind of trusting Lisa to go sell me or sell Lemonly. And I want to arm her with as much material as possible, the video, the examples, things like that.
Something that came from Stated Proposals was that the vast majority of proposals only get sent to one recipient, but in the cases where they were sent to multiple recipients who view it, that's the key point, they actually are viewing it, the close rate nearly doubled for those proposals.
Nearly doubled. Wow, okay. Good one. That's great. Okay, what else you got?
Okay, so we're still talking structure, right? I think this is really worthwhile because this is, I think the structure matters maybe more so than some other things. So essentially what you're saying is executive summary is your most personalized part of the proposal. The next one should talk about really the approach, the solution. It could be a process, could be your scope of work. You don't want it to be too technical, but you want it to essentially still be selling the benefits, the outcomes that you're going to provide. Right?
Yes.
With maybe then some details of how that breaks down. So you want to be like, we heard you, here's your problem that you're experiencing. We understand that problem. We've solved similar problems like this. And this section says, now here's how we might go about solving it. You don't want to put the actual creative in it or the ideas because then they can get hung up on specifics like, oh, that video concept isn't what I want. You just want to talk generally our process. This is how we get the outcome.
Any data there on how much, what's too much, what's not enough of detail there?
For that specific section, it's hard to say because every company is different. But in terms of just overall word count, definitely skew less is more.
Yeah.
When we looked at proposals by the actual word count, the ones that had less words, so the ones that had higher close rates, were kind of in that like 1,500 to 4,800 word count range, had the higher the close rates.
Okay, got it. I agree generally. I'm always a less is more person. The one thing I see sometimes solopreneurs or freelancers miss is they're doing things in their process that they don't mention in their proposal. So like, don't just say we'll make you a logo. It's like if you're going to do research, if you're going to do customer interviews, if you're going to do wireframe sketches and 2 rounds of edits, like say that, right? Because then you're not just saying I'm making a logo for 20 grand. It's no, you're doing all this stuff that helps you make the best logo or brand or whatever it might be. So yeah, if you're going to do it, say it. But I agree, generally less is more.
Absolutely. I think that the process matters a lot, right? Like you said, you need to justify the price. If you need to justify the price, and I think sometimes you do, depending on how educated your client is, being able to show them the level of work and effort that goes into it, and that's why you can command a higher rate versus, we're going to go and use AI to generate a logo and send it to you.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, builds credibility, shows that you know what you're talking about. You've been there before. All those good things.
Yeah, and and this is the really important thing. The process is how you get to the outcome. So you don't want to feature dump. And I was guilty of this when I ran an agency. Was I thought that if I used a lot of technical words and fancy, language, the prospect would be like, oh wow, well they obviously know what they're talking about. But as it's been said, a confused mind doesn't buy. So if you're going to throw out acronyms like even HTML and CSS, depending on who your prospect is, they may not be like, I don't know, gobbledygook. You don't really need to say it. Who cares? The website is going to help you get more traffic and more visitors, which solves your problem.
Yep. Sell the outcome. Yeah, for sure. Okay. Love it.
In terms of structure, what else? So, at this point, you're getting into, I think like deliverables, timeline, that kind of stuff sort of flows from it. So you're saying, this is our approach. This is how we get your outcome. Now here's more of the specifics. So here's what we're actually going to deliver. This gets into a little bit more like project territory or contract territory to some degree, because you're basically saying like, this is the actual thing you're buying. So if we started at this date, This is how long it would take to, finish it. This is kind of the work back
scope
schedule.
Details. Yep.
And this is a helpful section too, because not only does it show what the client is getting as part of it, you can also make clear what they're not getting. So if anything's not included, make that clear here, just so that you don't get into this thing where they assume that photography was part of the deal because they needed photos.
Yep.
Right? I've had that happen when I ran a web design business.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Because we didn't specifically say it's not. It also creates a little bit of urgency behind why they might want to sign sooner than later. Because if you show that, okay, well, the process is going to take about 90 to 100 days, that's assuming we start on this date. So if you want to launch sometime in January, you should probably start in September, because if you wait, then it's going to be a lot longer.
Yeah, and I think that's a healthy, it's not like a slimy sales. Creating urgency in your customer is good, but also explaining why you have this urgency, right? We got to get started because we want to deliver everything you said and more. So,
I just want to touch on that point, right? Because I think some folks, especially in the creative industries, may feel that sales in general is a slimy thing, or can be a slimy thing. Sales, like you said, I think you said it earlier, it's about helping people buy. And people are their own worst enemy. People come up with all kinds of reasons to put off making decisions, because making a decision, especially a monetary one, feels painful. It's not an enjoyable thing. And so people find a lot of hidden, they find a lot of made up reasons why they can't buy now, because they just want to put off the decision. Well, maybe next year's budget, maybe now is not a good time. We're just implementing a new CRM. Like, I don't know. It's like, so sales is really just about being like, okay, but does the problem still exist? Yes. Yeah. Do you want it solved? Yes. Then let's remove the obstacles. Let's get started.
Yeah. Yeah. Or even asking those good leading questions of like, what is that problem worth to you to solve? Or like, what would it mean if that problem still exists 6 months from now? Right. Like, then you kind of pushing on that pain and really creating the space where they're like, gosh, I do think Kyle can help me get rid of this problem. We should probably sign this proposal.
Yeah. So it's a mental reframe. You're not slimy. You're not trying to push your stuff. You're basically being like, well, I would love to see you not have this problem anymore. I want to help you. And so if you can help them get out of their own way so that, they can sign off, get you the budget so you can go and solve their problem for them and come back in 6 months and be able to say like, wow, I'm so glad I did that. Then you're coming at it from a mindset of, I'm just helping them.
Perfect. Anything else we're missing in structure or just the construction of the proposal?
So section 5 would be about us, our team bios. I think that's, that is kind of what separates a quote from a proposal, really, is that like, this is your chance to talk about yourselves. You don't front load the proposal with it. You put it somewhere near the middle.
Yeah.
This is your chance to basically be like, awards we've won, happy customers, testimonials, that kind of thing. Pricing would come next, 6. So it's actually really pushed towards the back. And I would frame it as your investment over pricing or fee summary.
Yes, agreed.
Because again, you want to make them feel like they're investing these dollars to have this other much more expensive problem solved.
Yeah, we eliminated that word at Lemonly. We never talked about price. Just not a good word, yeah.
And that's, either way, no matter how you do it, like people are going to go to the price first. That's just what the data says. Like that is where people go. They just try to find the price to see how much it costs. The goal though is to get them to like, look at the price. It shouldn't be a surprise. You should have already spoken to them about it. They should not get sticker shock when they see your proposal. If anything, maybe come a little under what you talked about. So it's like you get the anchoring effect.
Yeah. Yep.
And then finish it with, so just a note on pricing, also include some add-ons here, or ideally some packages, right? So if you present one price, it's easy to say no to it. If you say, well, if you want the rowboat, it's going to be a rowboat, it'll float. This is your cheap option. If you want the passenger cruise, it's this is a lot of money. And then this is somewhere in the middle. And that's ideally where you want to push people towards, with a couple of add-ons, right?
Yeah.
You were going to do this other service or hire somebody else to do the service. We actually do that in-house. So you could buy that as well.
And I'll even give you a testimonial there. That's probably was one of the biggest unlocks for us with Proposify versus Google Slides. Like our Google slide decks looked really pretty. But
they did. I remember them.
The ability to just click little small add-ons. We had the price of the working files. We had, let's take your infographic and make it into a PDF or a PowerPoint deck, or and what we started, increasing our average deal size 10, 15, sometimes 20% with what we called upgrades, not just like add-ons. We're sending you more stuff, but those upgrades, and kind of that, to use the Amazon term, kind of that average checkout size really helped our bottom line, right? Because those things usually had really good margin. You're selling something to a customer, you've already sort of sold something to them, so pretty easy to get those extra sales. And then that quote was just calculated right by the software. They could still click sign, and all of a sudden, instead of a 7K deal, it's a 10K deal.
Yeah, it's so effective. And then, really it's just your contract at that point. If you want to include it, some people don't. Some people wait till the proposal gets accepted and then they send a separate contract. There's no real, better or worse. But I will say that if you can just make it easy for them to sign off using an e-signature tool, we actually found that it was like, I want to be specific here, a 3x improvement in close rate if you use e-signature. So just massive.
Because they've already mentally decided, I'm ready to make this commitment. Just get them to click the button. Yeah.
Yeah. I think people would find it amazing. For some reason, when we think about B2B and selling to bigger companies, we don't think of it like consumer sales, but it's amazing to me how, even just simple things like make it easy to sign off can actually improve your close rate, because anytime there's friction in a deal, especially a high price one, like I already said, there's a lot of reasons people will create to say no, making it hard for them or making them putting a lot of onus and effort on their part to like print and sign and fax and all that stuff is a great reason for them to just put it off till later. And what happens is later, suddenly another problem enters their purview, and this one isn't that urgent anymore. So now it's let's address it in the future. So the more hurdles you can remove from it, the more successful you'll be.
Perfect. Okay, so those are 7 really good structure tips on how to think through. I even like the order, but you probably should have every one of those elements. Some might be longer and shorter, but just to whatever customized to you. But yeah, it makes sense to really build that back to the start of why a proposal. If you've thought through all 7 of those things, I think you immediately are viewed as a professional, right? And an organization, not just my friend's cousin who makes logos. So
yeah. And you don't just send the proposal either, right? You before you send it, you have that call booked on the calendar where you're going to present the proposal, and now you walk them through it. The proposal now is the leave behind for them to then forward it to other people, but you always present it, because that way, if they are confused about something and they're like, this doesn't make sense, if they're just reading it, they may, again, that reason to say no, they could just close it and never open it again, and you'll never know why.
Yeah. You're going to get a lot better feedback there too, right? If they're a live demo, you're going to see what they don't like or what they're confused about, what might be missing, which will only make your future proposals better.
Absolutely.
All right, so you've talked about why we need a proposal. We've gone through good structure. Any general tips or strategies on increasing our winning or close rates that maybe the state of proposals gleamed, or that you just learned after seeing millions of proposals get sent?
Yeah. So, definitely talk through a few already in terms of the way you structure it, the way you price it, things you do outside of the proposal, like making sure they understand the pricing up front, or at least they have a ballpark so they don't get surprised later, removing every obstacle to close, putting in, e-signatures and all this kind of thing. I guess one thing I would say is, because we know that from the data that essentially the close rate goes down the larger the deal size, which makes sense, right? If you're selling something for $1 million, you're probably going to have a lower close rate than if you're selling something for $50.
Yep.
There's a way around this, though, and this I was able to do this when I ran an agency. Sometimes, a lot of times, a prospect will have a big project. It might be, we need to redesign our whole website, and we need to change CMS platforms or something. And it's going to be $50,000, let's say, or $100,000 to do that job. Okay. And they're going to go out and talk to a whole bunch of different agencies about it. What I used to do pretty effectively was sell the smaller engagement first. Mm-hmm. So if they were building an app, first we're just going to do a blueprint. First, we're just going to do an upfront research piece to give you kind of the overall strategy. And that's only $10,000. Yeah. The big project is 50. And I used to say, if we move ahead and do this, they don't need as much as many stakeholders involved. They don't need as many approvals. Sometimes the person you're talking to can literally write the check because they have authority. And you say, when we're done this engagement, you'll be able to use this when you go out and talk to other agencies and maybe go to RFP about it. You can just use this. This is kind of like your blueprint. Of course, you bid on the big job when it happens, and 9 times out of 10, it just goes straight to you.
Love that. Great. Such a great tip. You're building trust. You're proving yourself as you go. And I'd say you could even do that. Like I've done where we split up a big project into phases. So, right, maybe it is a $100,000 3-phase project, but let's just do the first phase first. I'm happy to sort of prove ourselves, and you can we'll hit multiple milestones or checkpoints along the way. So
it reduces risk for the agency owner too, because they could be a nightmare client.
Yeah.
And, if you're agreed to like a 12-month project, that's half of your P&L, but it's miserable and they don't pay on time and they are continually blowing up the scope. You can figure that out early as like a little getting to know you project, and then decide, 4 weeks in, this isn't going to work. We don't even want the rest of the business.
Yeah, absolutely. Sort of a deal dating kind of matchmaking thing.
Yeah.
One thing I always thought was interesting too, especially as we got to bigger companies, sort of the psychology around commitments or how incentives work or how we like to protect the downside. But I found that when we got to a bigger organization, let's say we engaged with our customer, we called her Claire, Clear Communication Claire. So Claire works at a big Fortune 500. When she's signing that proposal, she's not just hoping to get the outcome for her organization. She's also trying to make sure she looks good within the context of her organization, right? So it's like, why choose Lemonly? Well, if Google and Netflix chose Lemonly, like my peers will be like, she's just making the obvious next best choice. But not only, so she's protecting the downside. I don't want to look bad, take too big of a risk, or work with an unknown commodity. But also, I always would say on the calls, especially when her boss or other colleagues, like, Claire's been so great to work with. Like Claire just was always on time and like gives us everything we need. And thanks to Claire, like we're going to deliver a home run project. It's just that same part about being a good listener. If she feels validated and making that choice, guess what? She's going to use you again.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a great point. The bigger the company you're dealing with, you're generally not dealing with the owners. And people who work in a company are more sometimes interested in reducing their own risk and their own exposure. There's that old saying, nobody ever got fired for buying Salesforce. And that's so true.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly. But let's end on that thought, because one thing that I found really interesting from your proposal is that smaller companies can win big deals. It's not just, you don't have to be big to work with big companies. Lemonly wasn't actually that big. We're 20 employees. So like, talk about what you guys learned from looking at proposals there.
Yeah. When it comes to close rate and deal size, they're pretty comparable. There's not a massive difference between big companies. We always tend to think for some reason that really big companies have really big deals. It's just not always that way. You can have a boutique shop that sells $1 million projects, and you can have a behemoth. I mean, Amazon sells $5 widgets, right? So the two don't always go one for one.
Yeah. In fact, it looked like the 30 to 100 employee shops closed more deals than the 100 plus employee shops, which was really interesting. So
yeah,
cool. Well, this is really helpful. Anything to close with, and then I have my superpower question I want to ask you. But any final thoughts on proposals, on entrepreneurs making that leap to winning big deals, more deals?
I will say is, if you want to get all the stats that we're talking about and more, you can go to proposify.com/state of proposals, state-of proposals, or just /SOP, cool. And it will redirect you the same place. You don't need a fancy tool to send your first proposals. You can definitely use Google Docs, Slides, whatever. But if you are interested in a tool like Proposify, we have the basic plan that you can check out. That's only $35 a month. Just to be able to like get up and running, 2 users, start building that library of content. And what we were going to throw out there for your listeners was a coupon code for 30% off. So if you start a free trial, you like it, you want to upgrade, just sign on to the basic annual plan and put in a coupon code LEADMORE and get an additional 30% off the first year.
Cool. Thanks for doing that, Kyle. That's great. Love it. All right. Well, we've heard a little bit of your journey, a lot of expertise, advice on winning more deals and building your proposals. So, you were a creative by heart. You're a hard rocker. You still are a hard rocker. What's your superpower, Kyle? What's the thing you do better than anybody else?
Well, I think I'm really happiest when I'm creating. And there was a while where I think when we were in the coaching program where I had delegated so much that I wasn't really doing any work anymore. It felt like I was just kind of meeting with people and that sort of thing. So once I got back into running product, I don't have a head of product. I don't have a head of marketing either. And I've been doing both of those roles, working directly with the contributors for the better part of 2 years. I'm the happiest I've ever been. So I would say like I'm most useful in my company when I'm creating content or creating product concepts or ideas.
That's cool. And going through that journey to learn that, right? Maybe the absence of that kind of brought you back to it.
Absolutely.
That's really cool. Awesome. Well, good to catch up. Thanks for sharing your knowledge with the Lead More community. And of course, that coupon code, we'll put that in the show notes. And thanks for helping people win more deals. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, John. Thanks for having me.
All right. That was Kyle Racky here on the Lead More podcast. Thanks, Kyle. I love we had a great mix there of sort of stories and looking back at our own careers, anecdotes, but also data from the state of proposals to really help hit home the points of why to create a proposal, how to create a proposal, what it looks like, and how to get them accepted. So thank you, Kyle. And remember, we'll put this in the show notes, but he had that offer. So if you go to proposify.com and you sign up for the free trial, he said you can enter the promo code LEADMORE. So he created for that for us, just the word LEADMORE, lowercase, uppercase, it doesn't matter. And you'll get 30% off the first year if you want to try out that tool. So a little perk benefit there for Lead More listeners. So thank you to Kyle for offering that and for sharing your wisdom on proposals. Remember, you can find the Lead More podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find us on video format in YouTube. We just crossed 500 subscribers. I know that's not a lot, but that was a milestone for us. My goal for the year was 1,000 subscribers. We're in late July, almost August now. A little bit behind pace, but it's growing, and that's the goal. So go to YouTube and hit that subscribe button. That will help us achieve our goal. And as always, leaders, take care and be well.